What do you want from me?
Rain, no.
You know exactly what I want.
You took me.
We sit with NF Samtana parking to Nakati.
We simply cannot accept this proposal.
Rain hammered the marble steps outside the Commerce Department as Amelia Price adjusted the lapel of her soaked navy suit. The gold-plated logo of her tech firm glimmered on her folder, slick with water. Inside, the fluorescent lights sliced through the gray afternoon. The reception desk smelled faintly of bleach and cold paper. She handed over the proposal. The clerk's smile was thin, practiced, rehearsed for moments like this. Wait here. He disappeared behind frosted glass. Amelia's heels echoed in the sterile lobby. Her heartbeat synchronized with the ticking wall clock. When the door opened, it wasn't the clerk who emerged. It was Harold Denton, the senior procurement officer. His gaze swept over her, landing like a fingerprint on every inch of her skin. He didn't look at the proposal. "We've decided to award the contract elsewhere," he said, voice steady, surgical. The folder was still sealed. Amelia's throat tightened. "The review wasn't scheduled until next week." He tilted his head, almost amused. "The board decided you're not the right fit." The word burned. Fit. Around her, suits passed without looking. One man gave a half smirk. Another pretended to check his phone. The clerk returned her untouched folder as if handing back something contaminated. Rain blurred the glass doors. The sound of thunder smothered the whisper Amelia couldn't release. Then Harold leaned in, close enough for his breath to fog the air between them. "Don't make this messy." The lights flickered, her fingers clenched around the folder until the edges cut into her palm. She turned toward the door, unaware that 3 cameras were already rolling. Cliffhanger, unresolved power imbalance, public humiliation, exposure beginning. Rain soaked the city in a dull metallic sheen. Every streetlight fractured into 100 trembling shards across the pavement. Amelia walked fast, folder pressed to her chest like a shield. She didn't look back at the Commerce Department's brass doors. She didn't need to. Harold Denton's voice clung to her skin like oil. Nia was already waiting by the curb, umbrella tilted at a sharp angle. "They didn't even read it, did they?" Amelia didn't answer. The tight line of her jaw was enough. "Amelia," Nia's tone dropped, quieter, sharper. "You know what this means." "Yeah." Her voice was a blade. "They decided before I walked in." Car horns bled into the downpour. The 2 women stood under the weak shelter of the awning. Across the street, a reporter in a cheap raincoat held up a phone camera. The red light blinked. "Miss Price," the reporter called. "Did they deny your bid?" Amelia didn't flinch. "Miss Price, was it the Denton board? Do you believe this was racially motivated?" Nia stepped forward, blocking the lens. "Back off." The reporter kept filming. Raindrops dripped from the mic cover like sweat. Amelia's eyes locked on the Commerce Department seal above the doors. She could still hear Harold's voice. "Don't make this messy." The phrase looped in her skull. A threat in plain language. Back at her apartment, the city's hum felt distant. Rain tapped against the window like a slow metronome. She slid the soaked folder onto the table and peeled her blazer from her shoulders. It still smelled faintly of bleach from the lobby. Nia leaned against the kitchen counter. "They've done this before. 3 other black-led firms, all blocked at committee stage. All disappeared afterward. They're not making me disappear." Amelia's voice didn't rise. It tightened. "Then we need to be careful." A sharp knock cut through the room. Amelia froze. Nia moved first, checking the peephole. Empty hallway. Just a single envelope on the floor. Amelia picked it up. No name, no seal. Inside, 3 words printed in black. "Drop the bid." The ceiling light buzzed. Her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered. Silence, then slow, deliberate breathing. Click. Deadline. Nia stared. "This isn't just discrimination anymore." Amelia stared at the envelope. Her pulse slowed, then sharpened. "Good," she said. "Then they've started to be afraid." Outside, the rain drowned the city in static. Upstairs, in a boardroom with no windows, Harold Denton poured himself a drink. He smiled and dialed again. 3 months earlier, the Commerce Department's tender bulletin had landed like a spark in dry brush. Amelia had read it twice, pulse steady, vision locked on the header. National Logistics AI Framework, 5-year government contract. Her firm, Nexure Dynamics, had been building that kind of infrastructure for 4 years. No one knew the architecture like she did. The conference room smelled of fresh toner and burnt coffee as her team gathered around the glass table. Screens lit the wall with cascading data streams, projected models, heat maps, and logistics nodes. Amelia paced in front of the main board. "This isn't just a contract," she said. "It's a system that'll shape national movement for a decade. If they control it, they'll decide who eats." Nia tapped the screen. 3 major competitors. All of them white-led firms. 2 with deep ties to Denton's board. "We're walking into a wall." "Then we break it," Amelia said. The next week, the wall began to show itself. Emails with attachments she never received. Meeting invites changed minutes before she arrived. Procurement officers who smiled while holding doors closed. A mid-level administrator in a slate gray suit leaned over the counter, voice low enough to sound like advice but built to wound. "Miss Price," he said, drawing out the miss. "Sometimes it's easier to partner with a more established firm, someone who fits the department's expectations." She stared at him. "We built the architecture the rest are trying to copy." He nodded like someone humoring a child. "I'm sure you did, but process is process. People prefer what they know." The printer behind him coughed out papers. Each sheet was a barrier she could see but couldn't touch. Nia met her in the hallway after. "You got the same line I did when I applied for counsel. Not the right fit." "This isn't incompetence," Amelia said. "It's structure." Weeks bled into each other. Each submission she sent returned with a new technicality. Wrong font size, unverified clearance, incorrect routing number, all manufactured precision dressed as procedure. She confronted a coordinator at one point, in a corridor lined with muted portraits of past department heads. "My submission passed your system checksum," Amelia said. The coordinator didn't blink. "Then maybe you should recheck it. Sometimes the system rejects entries for reasons we can't disclose." The sentence was too clean, polished by repetition. The corridor's silence was a weight. The portraits seemed to watch. Back in her office, Nia dumped the latest rejection letter on the table. "They're building a record. If this goes legal, they'll claim procedural failure on your end." "They're not building a record," Amelia said. "They're burying me in one." She leaned back, hands folded, eyes fixed on the ceiling. She had fought boardrooms, investors, competitors. This was different. This was a wall built without bricks. Silence, language, formality. Process, the last straw, came in the form of an email marked urgent. Resubmission required. Sent at 2:04 a.m. Deadline, 8 a.m. Her team worked through the night. The office was a furnace of blue light, printers rattling like exhausted lungs, keyboards clattering in bursts. When they hit submit at 7:56 a.m., the confirmation page hung for a breath, then blinked. Received. 3 minutes later, another message. Submission received after cutoff. Nia stared at the screen. "They rigged the clock." Amelia's voice was low, steady. "Then I'll make them prove it." The morning light spilled through the blinds like a cold blade. The wall stood, but it was now mapped, measured, named. They thought bureaucracy would drown her in silence. She had decided to make the silence loud. The leaked files arrived wrapped in a single encrypted email. No subject line. No signature. Just a zip folder labeled Meeting Minutes Pre-Review. Nia decrypted it on her office monitor while Amelia watched, arms folded, jaw locked. One document. Dated 2 weeks before the official review. Harold Denton's name was on the attendance list. So were the CEOs of 2 rival firms. Amelia's company name wasn't. "They decided before we submitted," Nia said flatly. "A private pre-approval meeting." Completely off record, Amelia didn't speak. She didn't blink, she read every line. Words like stability, optics, strategic alignment. Not one mention of merit, innovation, or technical evaluation. She looked up. They picked their winner and built the process around it. Nia's cursor hovered over the file. "We can't publish this yet. If we go out too early, they'll bury it, spin it, discredit the source. Then we go inside." 2 hours later, Amelia stood in the polished hallway of the Commerce Department. Glass doors gleamed like shields. A secretary's heels clicked across tile as she escorted her to a small waiting area. Everything here was designed to make people wait. The deputy director entered. A man with neat hair, silver cufflinks, and an expression trained to look neutral. "Ms. Price," he said smoothly. "You don't have an appointment. Then this will be quick." Amelia slid a printed copy of the leaked minutes across the table. "Explain this," His face didn't move. Only his hands folded a second tighter. "I don't know where you obtained this," he said, "but these are not official documents. They're stamped with your department's watermark. Forgery isn't uncommon in procurement disputes." Her laugh was short, blade thin. "You're not denying it happened. You're just denying it exists." He leaned back, voice softening into bureaucratic insulation. "Ms. Price, these matters are complex. Even if there was an informal discussion, nothing here indicates a decision was made. I'd advise caution before making claims that could damage your own credibility." The word credibility landed like a threat. In the parking garage afterward, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making everything hum. Nia stood by the elevator, phone to her ear. Amelia leaned against a concrete pillar, pulse still running hard. A voice came from the shadows. "You shouldn't have that document," she turned sharply. A young man stepped out, a junior employee, badge still clipped to his jacket. His hands trembled, not from fear of her, but of being seen. "I work in document processing," he said, voice low. The meeting was real. They pre-cleared Horizon Logistics. Denton signed off 2 weeks before bids opened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because they did it to my aunt's firm, too. 2 years ago." She folded. A distant car door slammed. He flinched. "If they find out I talked to you—" "They won't," Amelia cut in. He nodded once, shoved his hands into his pockets, and walked away fast, swallowed by the dim rows of concrete. Nia joined her. "Who was that?" "Someone who's seen the wall from the other side." They walked toward the exit. Above them, layers of glass and polished steel reflected a system that pretended to be transparent. It wasn't. It was designed to be looked at, not through. In Harold Denton's office upstairs, the deputy director closed the blinds. "Price has the minutes," he said. Denton didn't lift his eyes from his drink. "Then it's time to remind her where she stands." The first headline dropped on a local business blog. Black CEO accuses Commerce Board of rigged tender. The article was short, shaky, built on unnamed sources, but it spread fast. Within hours, her inbox filled with press requests. Every outlet smelled blood. Not the board's blood, hers. By afternoon, a televised segment showed archival B-roll of her company's early days, spliced with Denton's statement. "We run a fair and rigorous process. Any claims to the contrary are unfortunate misunderstandings." Unfortunate. The word coated his lie in silk. Amelia watched the broadcast from her office, blinds drawn, the blue light from the screen cutting across her face. Nia paced behind her, phone pressed to her ear, whispering with a journalist she trusted. "They're pushing the narrative hard," Nia said, hanging up. "He's got a PR machine moving faster than most campaigns." "It was always going to be like this," Amelia said. By nightfall, the attacks came sharper. A lobbyist tied to Horizon Logistics appeared on a primetime business panel, voice calm, smile wide. "Look, this isn't about race. Ms. Price is simply out of her depth. Horizon has delivered at national scale before. It's about capacity, not identity." The host nodded along like a metronome. Nia muted the TV. "They're painting you as unqualified. This is step 2 of the playbook." Online, anonymous accounts dug up old interviews, graduation photos, LinkedIn posts, fragments of her life stripped of context. A slow, deliberate dismantling. Her lead engineer knocked softly. "You need to see this." He handed over a tablet. A trending thread. "Why give the biggest logistics contract to someone who's never had real power? She's playing the race card." Affirmative action gone wild. Each line was a paper cut. None fatal, all designed to bleed her out slowly. Nia leaned against the table. "We can still walk away." Amelia didn't answer. The weight in the room wasn't panic. It was focus sharpening like glass. "They think I'll break quietly," she said finally. A call came from a morning show producer. They wanted her live. Not for justice, ratings. She accepted anyway. The studio lights the next day were hot, surgical. The host smiled like a blade hidden in silk. "Ms. Price, many are saying your accusations are unfounded. Do you have proof?" "They didn't ask Horizon for proof," Amelia replied. Her voice carried no tremor. He blinked. "A small shift, and why do you think they didn't?" she added. The silence stretched for a fraction too long. That was all it took. Clips of the exchange spread faster than Denton's press releases. Someone set the moment to music. Someone else cut it into a montage of rigged contracts. For the first time, the narrative didn't just belong to the board. It cracked. Amelia walked out of the studio into the cold air. Nia fell into step beside her. "You just lit the fuse," Nia said. "No," Amelia replied. "They lit it years ago. I just struck the match." Across town, Harold Denton poured another drink. The smile this time was thin. Not amused, calculating. The room was built to make people small. Pale gray walls. A single clock ticking too loudly. A long table polished to a mirror finish. Fluorescent lights that flattened everything into one shade of tired. Amelia sat at the far end, flanked by Nia and two of her senior engineers. Across from them, 5 officials from the Oversight Committee. Harold Denton at the center. The chairwoman opened with formal language that meant nothing. "This hearing is for the purpose of clarifying procedural concerns related to the National Logistics AI tender." Clarifying, Denton's suit was immaculate, tie straight, face carved into bureaucratic calm. "We welcome transparency," he said. The words were clean. His eyes were not. Nia slid a file onto the table. "We'll start with Exhibit 1. Pre-approval meeting minutes dated 2 weeks before the official bid window. Denton's signature included." A low ripple moved across the panel. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Denton? I've already stated," Denton said evenly, "that these documents are fabricated. Anyone with basic software can fake a watermark." Amelia leaned forward. "And anyone with power can hide behind process." Silence cracked. One committee member shifted in his seat. The chairwoman nodded for Nia to continue. She played an audio clip. Denton's voice. A short recording captured in the hallway during one of his conversations, clean enough to be undeniable. "Horizon will get it. She'll scream bias and it'll pass in the news cycle like everything else." The sound hung in the air like smoke. Denton didn't flinch. Out of context. Illegally obtained. Irrelevant to the formal evaluation. But something in his jaw twitched. A junior member of the committee leaned forward. "Mr. Denton, did Horizon Logistics receive assurances prior to the open bidding process?" Denton's voice dropped half a register. "No." "Did you attend the meeting in question?" "Informal networking event." "No decisions made." Amelia spoke then, not loud but with precision. "I built the platform they refused to review. I stood in the lobby while they handed the contract to someone else behind closed doors. That's not networking. That's theft." The silence after that was thick. Not supportive, not hostile. Heavy. One of the engineers beside her tapped a document. "We have server timestamps showing our bid submission passed check some 6 minutes before their claimed cutoff. Their internal system shows 8 minutes after. Someone manipulated the clock." Nia slid the evidence forward. Denton inhaled slowly through his nose. The panelists read. The weight shifted. Not in Amelia's favor yet, but no longer entirely in his. The chairwoman's voice had changed. Less formal, sharper. "Mr. Denton, the committee will request server logs and secure backups. Effective immediately." A muscle in Denton's neck jumped. Amelia felt it, not victory, not safety, but fracture. The kind that comes before a structure collapses. When the hearing adjourned, the hallway outside buzzed with press and aides. Cameras clicked. Someone shouted her name. She didn't turn. Nia matched her pace. They're rattled. "Not enough," Amelia said. "He still thinks he can bury this." At the top of the stairwell, Harold Denton stopped her with a single sentence. "You don't belong in these rooms." She turned, eyes locked on his. "Then I'll burn the door down." For the first time, his expression faltered. Only a second. But it was enough. The leak was surgical. A rival CEO's email meant for private counsel landed in a public mailbox. Internal threads, signed memos. A spreadsheet of payments labeled consulting. Horizon Logistics CFO forwarding a note that mirrored the deputy director's talking points. Newsroom seized the files like a body they could carry into the light. Amelia watched the first broadcast in a bare conference room, blinds half closed, a single laptop throwing headlines across her face. The anchor read the excerpts without pity. The tone of the segment shifted mid-sentence, the calm professionalism folding into something harder, angrier. Protest footage from earlier that week flashed in the corner. People holding signs, chants framed by wet breaths and bundled coats. Someone had filmed Denton spilling a drink outside a fundraiser. His composure cracked on loop. Her phone vibrated into a chorus, messages of support, requests for comment, raw clips, legal volunteers. A senator's aide asked for a meeting. An investigative reporter wanted to confirm a source. Nia triaged like a field surgeon, routing calls, prioritizing evidence. Everyone expected action because the leak had made it impossible to ignore the smell of money. Newsrooms trawled the data. Bloggers mapped connections. The social feeds pivoted from suspicion to outrage. Euphemisms collapsed under blunt labels: corruption, collusion, cronyism. By dawn, protesters returned to the Commerce Department steps with banners that read simple, devastating things. Ridicule slid into indictment. At the center of the storm, Harold Denton attempted to stitch a response together. His statement was a study in denial and legal caution. "We comply with all rules." The phrase hung like a paper shield that could not hold back the crowd. Horizon's shareholders demanded an internal review. Lawyers for the rival firm circulated terse denials. Patterns, however, are hard to argue away when screenshots show matching timestamps and transfer logs. A portal of anger opened online and did not close. People called for resignations. An oversight committee member publicly demanded immediate transparency. The chairwoman scheduled emergency hearings. Cameras multiplied in the hallways like a new law. At a midday town hall called by the Commerce Department, Denton stood before a packed room and read prepared lines. A young staffer asked about the payment trail. Denton deflected with legal polish. The junior employee who had spoken to Amelia earlier rose, holding a printout. "You promised fairness," he said. "My aunt couldn't get a contract either." "Now I know why," the room hummed. Denton's jaw tightened. A voice in the back shouted for resignation. Applause broke out. Not for him, for Amelia, the firestorm felt like wind. It did not knock her down. It lifted dust. She spent the day in meetings. Legal teams, press strategists, community organizers. Federal investigators called. Agents' voices were concise, direct. They requested submissions, server logs, correspondence. Her engineers prepared data packages with timestamps and checksum proofs, sending them through secure channels. The technical evidence looked clinical and immovable. Late afternoon brought a leaked internal memo. Denton's department had suppressed at least 4 procurement alerts flagged by compliance. The memo included access logs showing odd approvals at odd hours. The details threaded a narrative that had been a scatter of suspicions. An editor from the independent outlet that filmed Amelia's rain-soaked exit offered a sit-down. On camera, she did not perform courage. She recited facts. "These systems are made to look blind," she said. "They have vision if you know where to point it." The line cut through a newsroom static like a wire. Horizon's board convened an emergency meeting. Executives circulated distance memo drafts that read like people abandoning a ship. Denton's alliances frayed into denials that sounded less like defense and more like survival. Late that night, Denton watched the live feed of protesters at the department steps. He tapped a stack of documents. His hands were not steady. He called counsel, voice low. "Urgent." "Contain it," he said. "Discredit the source. Tie it to someone with a motive." He did not know Amelia's phone had been on speaker in a small legal office where investigators collated her files. He did not know the junior employee had copied logs to 3 reporters. He did not know the senator's aide whose morning had been pushed into action had a long memory and a longer list. The firestorm would not be a single blaze. It would be many points of heat, fed by evidence, witness courage, and a public unwilling to look away. For Amelia, the blaze was confirmation and cost. Public attention offered protection and pressure. Allies materialized in meaningful ways. Lawyers with subpoenas, technologists vouching for their code, activists rallying the streets. Every gain opened new vulnerabilities. Her inbox filled with threats as well as support. Hate messages threaded. With death threats arrived alongside offers of pro bono counsel. Her legal team advised caution while her PR pushed transparency. Investigators served subpoenas across the morning. Journalists interviewed former procurement staffers who had seen patterns but feared repercussions. Each testimony became timber in a larger structure. At midnight, Nia shut her laptop and slid a note across the table. "They have to act." Amelia read it, then looked at her hands. For the first time since the rain, she allowed cautious relief. The system had shown its seams. People could see them now. The rest was procedure. Subpoenas, hearings, legal dances that might take months. The rest was also rebuilding, of trust, process, and a company's reputation weaponized as proof of unfitness. Outside, the city slept poorly. On the Commerce Department steps, someone left a single protest sign face down on the marble, its words sullen in the moonlight. The subpoena hit Denton's department at 7:42 a.m. Sharp black letters on white paper, delivered by two federal agents who didn't shake hands. By noon, their teams were already in the server room. Laptops were boxed. Access was cut. Phones were collected in plastic bins. The illusion of control dissolved in quiet panic. Amelia arrived at the Commerce Department an hour later, not as a petitioner, but as a witness under protection. Cameras swarmed the steps. Flashbulbs popped in dull bursts under gray skies. Her steps were measured, not defiant, inevitable. Inside, the hallways she'd once walked through as an outsider felt altered, not kinder, just stripped of pretense. Workers who'd avoided her eyes before now stared openly, like people watching a building crack. Naya met her near the elevator. "They've frozen his accounts. Horizon's board is already trying to scrub statements." "Doesn't matter," Amelia said. On the 7th floor, a conference room had been transformed into an investigation hub. Agents sorted through binders, hard drives, printed ledgers. A procurement clerk was being escorted out, face drained of blood. Denton entered minutes later. He looked smaller, though nothing about his suit had changed. His eyes caught Amelia's across the room. For the first time, the arrogance wasn't absolute. It flickered. A federal investigator began reading charges under review. Collusion, interference with a federal tender, undisclosed financial conflict of interest. Denton tried to keep his jaw tight. It trembled anyway. Amelia stood near the window, silent. This wasn't her fight anymore. It had moved beyond her hands into the machinery of law. Midday, a journalist leaked the memo investigators had found, a single-page internal directive signed by Denton, authorizing Horizon Logistics as pre-cleared for strategic alignment. Every signature, timestamp, and routing ID matched the minutes Nia had decrypted weeks earlier. The headline spread faster than any denial could. Tender rigged from day one. Internal memos confirmed Denton Horizon pact. Public opinion shifted from outrage to something colder. Certainty. By evening, Harold Denton was suspended pending prosecution. The Commerce Department released a 2-sentence statement so flat it became a confession. The department takes these allegations seriously. The tender will be reassessed under emergency review. The walls that had once shut Amelia out began to bend. 2 days later, she walked back into the same boardroom where she'd first been dismissed. The long table gleamed under harsh overhead light. No executives this time. No glass shields. Just an interim board and a government liaison who read her company's name out loud. Nexure Dynamics awarded the National Logistics Framework tender under emergency reassignment. Full oversight to follow. No applause. No smiles. Just the sound of a pen scratching across paper. Amelia didn't sit. She didn't speak. Nia exhaled next to her. "We did it," she whispered. Amelia's eyes fixed on the empty chair at the head of the table, the one where Denton had once sat. The absence said more than any victory speech could. In the hallway, the junior employee waited. He didn't approach, just nodded once like someone acknowledging a shift too large to name. Amelia walked past the glass doors. The rain had returned. She let it soak the edge of her blazer. The fight was one in procedure, not spectacle. The wall hadn't fallen cleanly. It cracked, fractured, buckled under its own weight when the light hit it hard enough, and she had walked through the break. Harold Denton's resignation letter went public at 6:12 a.m. It was written in stiff legal language, stripped of apology. He cited health concerns and a hostile media environment. No mention of Horizon Logistics. No mention of the internal memo that ended his career. No mention of the quiet federal car that had taken him home the night before. By midday, a convoy of reporters camped outside his gated neighborhood. Someone leaked his net worth. Someone else unearthed archived speeches where he'd championed fair competition. Every clip turned brittle in playback. His name was no longer attached to power. It was attached to Scandal. Inside the Commerce Department auditorium, the tender reassignment ceremony was unadorned. A podium, a seal, a single camera feed. No executives lined up to shake hands, no PR blitz. The country didn't need another smiling photo. It needed a contract signed without corruption. Amelia stood at the podium. She wore the same navy suit she'd worn the day she was dismissed. The folder was no longer wet with rain. Its edges were smooth and flat. The government liaison cleared her throat and announced the emergency reassignment. Nexure Dynamics had the contract. It was done. She stepped forward, signed her name, and stepped back. No speech, no smile, just ink on paper. Outside the building, people had gathered, not a mob, not a rally. Quiet citizens with cardboard signs that read, "We saw it this time," and "Never again behind glass." Nia joined her on the steps. The board's collapsing. 3 more resignations. Investigators are widening the net. Horizon's CFO is lawyering up. Amelia's eyes didn't move from the sky. Good. A journalist asked her for a statement. She said nothing. Silence was heavier than anything she could have said. In Denton's old office upstairs, boxes were stacked. His nameplate was gone. The walls were bare except for faint rectangles where frames had once hung. An agent sealed the door with yellow tape. The news that evening ran his face in a split screen with hers. 2 names, 2 trajectories, 1 broken system. But justice wasn't a clean thing. It never was. Amelia returned to her apartment that night to find 3 new threats in her inbox. Anonymous senders. Vile language. The system didn't crumble all at once. It just changed shape. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the signed contract lying in the lamplight. Nia walked in carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "It's over," she said softly. "No," Amelia replied. "It's documented. The difference was everything." Later, she visited her father's grave. He had built trucks, hauled freight, believed in systems that never believed in him. She ran her fingers along the etched stone and let the silence settle into her bones. "Got it through the front door," she murmured. Wind moved through the trees, blunt and cold. No music, no applause. Back at Nexure headquarters, her engineers were already restructuring the logistics platform to scale nationally. The work would be hard, relentless, unforgiving. But the contract was theirs. Earned, fought for, burned into record. A notification buzzed on her phone. A message from the junior employee. "They can't bury this anymore." She replied with nothing. She didn't need to. In the Commerce Department basement, old files were being scanned, digitized, dragged out of the dark. Denton's resignation was just the first fissure. More would follow. On a rainy street, Amelia walked alone. No press, no speeches, no spectacle. Just the sound of wet pavement under her shoes. The door had been broken. She intended to keep it that way. 3 months later, the Denton scandal was no longer headline news. It had settled into the bloodstream of public memory, a story folded into think pieces, political debates, and court filings. The country had moved on, but the walls that once shut people out still bore cracks. Nexure's headquarters pulsed with relentless movement. Forklifts, freight algorithms, contracts. Amelia's team had expanded from 8 to 42 employees. What was once a marginalized bid was now a national supplier. Their work wasn't glamorous. It was infrastructure. It ran beneath the noise. Nia pushed open her office door without knocking. DOJ filed formal charges this morning. Denton's plea deal got rejected. He's going to trial. Amelia didn't look up from the procurement dashboard. Good. They're also pulling in 3 more execs. Horizon's collapse is systemic now. Good, she repeated. Outside the glass walls of her office, engineers argued over shipment routes. A contractor cursed about customs clearance delays. Someone dropped a clipboard. The world kept moving. But inside Amelia, silence carved its own territory. Victory hadn't erased the memory of the boardroom dismissal, the security guard's unblinking stare, the sound of the rain beating against the door as they pushed her out. Nia leaned against the frame. "You haven't given a single interview." They got their story, Amelia said. No, they got the scandal. Not the story. She didn't respond. In the evening, she attended the Commerce Department oversight hearing. Rows of polished officials sat beneath cold fluorescent lights. Amelia took her seat as a witness, not an applicant. Her nameplate on the table read, Amelia Carter, CEO, Nextshare Dynamics. The chairman leaned toward the microphone. Ms. Carter, can you confirm that your company's proposal met every legal compliance standard prior to the original rejection? Her voice was steady. Yes. And can you confirm, another official added, that the rejection was not supported by documented performance concerns? Yes. And finally, did Mr. Denton or any member of the board ever provide written justification for that decision? Her jaw tightened. No. The silence that followed wasn't hers to fill. It belonged to the room. Screens behind the panel displayed procurement timelines. Every omission, every fabricated concern, every strategic alignment note Denton had signed now sat in public record. A senator leaned back. Thank you, Ms. Carter. The rest of the hearing unfolded like slow demolition. Witnesses testified. Whistleblowers confirmed back-channel deals. Denton's attorneys filed procedural objections that didn't stick. By dusk, Amelia stepped out into the cold. Nia was waiting at the curb. They're going to convict him, she said. Probably, Amelia replied. Does it feel enough? She didn't answer. The truth was precise but unsatisfying. Denton's fall was inevitable. But the system that enabled him still existed, papered over, dented, waiting for the next man in a gray suit. They drove through the city in silence. Billboards flashed the new Nextshare logo. Truck convoys moved through wet streets. Workers in reflective jackets checked manifests at depots that hadn't existed a year ago. In the rearview mirror, Amelia caught her own eyes. Unyielding, unchanged. This wasn't a triumph story. It was a breach, a small deliberate rupture, and she had chosen not to close it.